All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record, the show where we sit down with people pushing boundaries in clean tech, sustainability, and decentralized energy. Today's guest is someone who's not only seen the solar space evolve, but who's also shaping how it feels for everyday homeowners and businesses in New England. I'm thrilled to be joined by Freddy today, founder of Critical Mass Solar, a Massachusetts-based solar company that's grown by doing the opposite of what most people expect. No pressure, no gimmicks, just results. So if you've ever wondered what it really takes to succeed in solar on a local level or how you build trust in a skeptical market, this one's for you. So welcome, Freddie. How you doing today?
Good, good. I really appreciate you having me and excited to be here.
Perfect. No, we're excited too. I think you've got some great ideas that you can bring to the table. So I kind of want to jump into it. I mean, let's start at the beginning. What sparked your journey into solar and why did you decide to launch Critical Mass?
Yeah, it was kind of a sporadic moment for us. I came from Lithuania, always kind of wanted to be in business. I was fortunate enough to be pretty good at basketball. I got a scholarship to play basketball here in the States, and
Amazing.
my dream was always, to come here, get a degree, go back to Europe, play basketball, make a little bit of money, start a business. A few things went well, some injuries happened, and then kind of stayed behind. And then still loved basketball at the time. I was teaching and coaching at a couple private schools, and then while recruiting and so on, just kind of was in sales at all times. And then a buddy of mine, he had a solar company of his own, and kind of went for a ride along, kind of see how it's going. And one thing led to another. We started a company. My father-in-law came up with the name. My mother-in-law drew up the logo. And now my wife and I are both in this and have been doing this for a little over 8 years. So it's been exciting. Our two young sons are kind of in it as well. They help us at fairs and so on. So it's really, kind of like we've grown from just an idea to a pretty successful business.
That's fantastic. I mean, speaking about that, you built the business around transparency and like I saw some customer education, was there a turning point or, specific moment that led you to that model?
I, just living life and kind of being pushed by, salesmen. Nobody really likes a car salesman, right? But to be successful, everybody thought, or everybody kind of speaks to a certain degree that, you have to do these gimmicks or do, like, this type of clothes or that type of clothes and so on. And I personally never enjoyed being pushed into anything. So I kind of went with the education. And it's I show you exactly what the savings would look like, how the system operates, and then how things work. And then if that's something for you, great, let me know, and then we'll proceed. I'll follow up with you, but I'll never push you into one way or another. It's not going to be like a gimmicky some sort of clothes or whatever. So it was pretty much from my own personal experience of what I don't like to be done to me. So I just kind of said, it's like, you know what, we're not going to do it as well.
That's amazing. Was there like a moment where that exact thing happened? Like you had like a typical solar sales pitch and you realized it wasn't working anymore? Like, did that happen to you?
Not really. Right from the get-go, it's like, it always I approached as like, hey, these are the facts. This is kind of what's going on. If you trust me, if you trust the facts, we are the right person. And then, for the most people, they kind of understand and trust, especially in the construction business. It's a big factor because it's a lot of money being invested, and this is a fairly long process. So even if the math works but chemistry is not there, it's you cannot do business. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like with we approaching, math and chemistry need to line up for us.
That's fantastic. I think that kind of aligns with what the podcast tries to do, right? Like we're trying to educate people. We're trying to, not let them get taken advantage by the BS that kind of goes on with some of these like sales guys and some of the companies that are in the industry that kind of just ruin the entire experience for, the good ones, I guess. So I think it is great to lead with education. I hope, that's why we have you here, that we can, get some of your insight and teach some people about what's going on. But I mean, your team serves both, residential and commercial clients in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I mean, what are the major differences you're seeing between those two markets right now?
They're very similar in terms, it's pretty expensive electricity. Northeast is outside, like, maybe California. We have the most expensive electricity in the country. So
Mm,
in that sense, it's very similar. In New Hampshire, the net metering is not one to one what we have in Massachusetts. So
Hmm.
A couple things are slightly different, but overall, if you pay quite a bit for electricity, it makes sense to do it. So yeah, so in a sense, it's very similar, but there are a few differences, and in terms of permits and then so on, it's slightly easier to do business in New Hampshire. Permitting is quicker, and a lot of the towns are very eager to get any kind of construction done. In Massachusetts, it's a little, some towns, especially closer to the city, are not as easy to just kind of navigate. So yeah.
Fair enough. And I kind of want to talk about that also, like not just the process, but I guess installation, because I feel like that's one of the things that, very rarely is changed. So, I mean, what's your process like from the first contact to the final connection?
Yeah, so after the somebody contacts, or we find the lead, or however you want to call it, once we connect with the customer the first time, we get their bill, we analyze the bill, we see if we can whatever we can fit on the roof and so on, and then kind of make sure we structure the system for them, because each system is very unique, and for that particular house, right? After that, we do a site visit, we take a look at it, explain kind of like ins and outs, and then people say like, yep, let's proceed. Then we start with the application with the utility company. We want to make sure that they get the pre-approval, make sure there are no added costs, like a transformer upgrade, or any kind of panel or meter upgrades, and then so on. Once they give us the pre-approval, we proceed with the permits, and then the installation. So installation itself is most installs is just 2 days, but the entire process, we're talking about anywhere between like 6 to 10 weeks from signing the documents into turning the system on. But hands on site, it's really just 2 days, and after that, we do the inspections, and the utility company replace the meter, and put a bi-directional meter or net meter, and at that point we can turn the system on. And so like I said, it can be in certain towns and certain utilities, it can be as short as 4 weeks, but on average we're seeing between like 6 to 8 weeks from start to turning the system on.
Fair enough. That's amazing. In terms of the education that you guys, lead with, do you think that homeowners understand net metering and incentives, when they reach out, or, you win the lead, or is there like quite the learning curve?
It's still quite a learning curve, because majority of the people that reach out, they still kind of have they've heard horror stories, right? They're like, oh, my cousin or my aunt, or my neighbor has solar, and they say it doesn't work, right? If that's the case, we kind of talk to them about like there are different ways of doing solar, right? Like there's a purchase, there's a lease, and there's like a power purchase agreement, right? Three different ways of doing it, and not all of them would make sense for every single person, right? So we try to educate, like, hey, if you do this, this is where you save. If you do this, this is where you save. But essentially, if um it's still kind of like it's hard for them to like to trust the, not necessarily the salespeople, but like the industry, because of like the
Mhm.
horror stories they heard. So that's my other thing, is like, educating and going to real estate agent seminars that they do. I go in and try to teach them about buying and selling solar houses with solar, so what to look for, how to do it. So I'm trying to educate, so there's like the fear of uncertainty is a lot less, or excuse me, a lot lower. So that's kind of like, anytime we come in, it's still that uncertainty of you know is this the right thing for me? So I just lay out the three options, and there's like, let me know which one you want to go. And we don't do PPAs or leases. So I say like, if you need that, I'm gonna set you up with the right person, so you can go with that. Yeah.
That's amazing. And do you have partnerships with companies that help you out with that process?
We do, yes. But again, once I lay out the facts and people understand what's going on, probably 9 out of 10 end up doing the purchase option once they hear the comparison between the two options.
That's fantastic. And I mean, I think now a big conversation, especially since you're bringing up options, is handling roofs and like actual energy storage, whether it's a battery, whatever it is. How are you navigating the differences between, the two different processes?
Yeah, so the batteries are kind of just, it's starting to become a little bit more popular, because the warranties are longer, the prices have gone down, and then people are truly starting to understand what that kind of, you know, what to expect from like a storage battery, right?
Hmm.
And in Massachusetts, we're really spoiled because we have one-to-one net metering. So if you don't lose power much in your area, putting a battery to store it for backup power is not necessarily the best thing, right? But there are some utility companies. One, there's like a municipality right near us that has peak hour rates. And their rates, for 20 hours of the day is very, very low. But for 4 hours between 4 and 8 p.m., it's extremely high. They do 10x because they are asking people to use less electricity during those 4 hours because that's the most expensive time for them to purchase. So for those people, we're just installing battery only. So we install the battery, charge the battery when it's off peak, and then we shut off from the grid and run off the battery. So really knowing what kind of utility companies offer what in the area is the major key, right? And that's kind of like why it makes a lot more sense to go with like a local person that knows all ins and outs of like the utility companies and not just kind of like, oh, we only focus on three companies, the three major companies, and we don't really want to deal with anybody else. So
Fair enough. And what's the difference in process of someone that's just getting a battery versus somebody that's getting an entire solar system?
it's very similar. You still have to do the application with the utility company, and you still have to get the permits, installation, inspections, and then it's very very similar. It's just so instead of having solar and battery or just solar, you have all of it, or just the battery.
It's amazing. One thing that stands out, and I know you kind of touched on it earlier, but your reviews mention a lot of ease, clarity, no pressure, kind of like what you were advocating for before. And I think it's great. I think it's a great approach, but maybe just put it into like words. What's your philosophy on service and communication?
So one thing that I really pride on, and I think it's an important thing in construction business and solar roofing, whatever any kind of service on the house type of thing, it's an expensive service that we provide. So when people sign up with us, respond to them within an hour. Or they reach out to us and they say like, "Hey, Freddie, we have a question. I have a rule that we need to respond within an hour." Even if we don't have an answer or if we are busy or whatever, say like we need to acknowledge the people that's saying like, hey, I heard you in the meeting, get back to you when I can. Just for, just to hear people acknowledge you that you've been heard and you're not questioning if you haven't heard from your guy, for like a day, human nature takes you right to the worst case scenario. You start wondering, it's like, oh my God, like, did they steal my money? Did like, is that they got like what? So there's no, for me, that's the worst thing that we can do to a customer that signs up with us. I do not like anybody kind of questioning like, what's happening. So within an hour, we try to respond. And if we don't have an answer, we're like, hey, please give us, we acknowledge that we heard you within an hour. So it
That's
helps a
amazing.
lot puts a lot of people at ease, understanding that we are with them and we'll be here.
That's fantastic. Is that an automated process or do you have somebody that's constantly there?
That's me.
That's amazing.
I
That sounds
mean,
like
and
there's a lot of
again,
moving
like
parts.
another thing, we're not big, so we are able to do those things, and that's another thing that I could tell people. Like we really try to focus on certain amount of jobs per year that I want to do, so everybody gets the same kind of treatment. It's like it's almost like a white glove service, and everybody gets the same type of service, right? Because if we get too big and so on, we cannot do these things, and then more mistakes and more issues can arise. So just focusing on what we're good at and really helping people with those biggest pain points in the industry. I think it's extremely important.
It is important, especially that you always hear it. You hear quality over quantity all the time, and I think it's very, very important to keep that in mind.
That's exactly it. And at that point, it's a lot of people understand why maybe we're not, the cheapest or whatnot. And like maybe they understand that like, oh, there's a premium for certain things. So it's most people are really because they're making this investment, for 25, 30 years. They looking for something that is going to last and be there and not get the cheapest one and then not have anybody to service. It's there's really like give and take, and I know exactly where we are in terms like the industry standard. And I know we're probably not the cheapest, but we're definitely not the most expensive. But I know for a fact that in the area, from any kind of like call it boutique services, we are one of the more responsive, and we will talk to you. And 9 out of 10 times you will be getting me in terms of like answering all the questions. We don't hide, we don't. I mean, we knock on wood, we don't really have many issues. But if somebody's like, "Hey, Freddie, something's not working," I'll get back to them and be like, "Hey, yep, heard you. It's Sunday. Let me get back to you on Monday once I'm gonna have one of my guys over," and so on. So they truly appreciate just kind of like, oh, all right, that's why we did it. Like it just reiterates their point of why they went with us. And as you said, like the reviews really one of the biggest things. And like I'm pleased that they say like communication is really important. And they put in that. I don't ask, like I don't say anything what to put. Like that's what people really
Take away from it.
take away from it, and say it's we're just gonna keep riding this wave, and then just keep utilizing these strengths, because it seems like it's a really a major pain point for customers.
Exactly. And I think the question naturally, I think, comes up in terms of scalability, right? I guess before I get into my whole spiel, how many jobs, I guess, are you able to pump out with such a high focus on quality?
Yeah, so we're really looking, I try to stay between 70 to 100 jobs a year, for residential. And now that we're getting into like a little bit more commercial, we can still, we're looking to do about roughly um 2 megawatts a year.
That's fantastic. That's really, really big. And, given that, are there any current myths that you're currently debunking for customers? I mean, is there anything that, there's a lot of, noise and a lot of questions around kind of like policy and, how things are actually meant to be implemented. And with your focus on education, is that something that you also educate with?
Yeah, we'll talk exactly about what to expect, and what we're hearing from the government, or what's happening in Washington. We have our lobbyists that we support, and then they kind of give us like a fairly consistent updates. But it's still it's hard to know, and regulations change fairly regularly. So these things like that kind of happen, and we just try to be on top as much as possible. And if somebody asks, I will never try to say something I'm not fully aware of what's going on. Just like, hey, that's a great question. I don't have an answer at the moment, but give me a weekend, and I'll dig deeper and I'll get some answers. So you'll never get something from me like just kind of shoot from the hip and then hope they forget about it and move on.
No, that's a great way to approach it. But is there a conversation that you find yourself having, I guess repeatedly? Like, what's a conversation that you wish more people maybe had before going into solar?
So right now, probably in the last month or two, it's been the tax credit, the solar tax credit, whether it's staying going. And as of right now, it's going. The Congress has passed it. It's stuck in Senate. We don't know which part of the 1,000 page bill that they are hung up on, right? Like the solar, we like in our industry, we think that's the most important thing. Like that's exactly what they're talking. But up there on the hill, they might not even be considering it, and they're just hung up on something completely different. So as of right now, the tax credit is going away at the end of this year. We'll see what happens. But again, I tell people, okay, the rest of the world does not have these kind of tax credits. So, and the rest of the world is continuously building solar, and more people are going solar. So even if we don't have the tax credit, something's going to change, and we're going to continue to build, because this is the only way to really secure yourself, from price increases from electricity. If you can just lock yourself in and have it, and kind of be done with it. So, but yeah, tax
That's
credit is
amazing.
like the biggest thing that we talk about right now.
Of course, and that's a conversation we've had a lot on the podcast as well, is, what's going to replace it, if even there is going to be something else that's going to incentivize, homeowners, business owners, to go solar. Because I think now the biggest selling point is the tax credits, is the incentives. And I mean, it gets tough to start to figure out other ways of selling. You have to get creative, because it happened here in Canada and the industry kind of slowed down, where some of the loans, like the tax-free loans that we had, that got taken away or got minimized. There's no more net metering in Ontario, at least. So it's a bit of a process now. So you're seeing a lot of people get really crafty and it's interesting for my industry because I work with a lot of these companies, and I know being able to get them in front of customers is the easy part, but what's the selling point? Why are people going solar, right?
Right,
Because
right.
energy here is, essentially pretty cheap. And not maybe necessarily cheap, but I'd say pretty inexpensive compared to the rest of the world. So, those incentives aren't pushing people over the bridge and aren't pushing them over the finish line to really like
Hmm.
invest in solar. So I think that's another big conversation though. But let's dig into how you're getting critical mass solar in front of people. What's working in your marketing right now? How are you getting people's eyes on what you're doing?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of a SEO. My wife writes blogs, and we do some social media stuff. We have like a few ads running, or the SEO is running on Google. But for the most part, for us, probably I would say 80%, maybe even like closer to 90 potentially, is really word of mouth. So the more people that we reach out, the more people we reach, the more people we do what we say we do and what others said that we do. They call their friends and they're like, all right, if you're gonna do this, this is the person you're gonna do with, right? Even if you're not gonna use Freddy or Critical Mass Solar, you will know exactly what to look for and how to navigate this entire thing. Because for some, like for some, it's still, maybe like the communication or the other things that we bring to the table may not be the most important thing. And they are maybe looking for the price, which is absolutely perfectly fine. But like what I want to make sure when I leave a customer, I leave them in good place and they know what they're talking about and they can make that educated decision to go with A, B, or C or whatever, because that's the only way to really, change the perception of what we're dealing with.
It's amazing. And I think like what you're saying, it all comes down to trust. And I think that reflects a lot because you've been on a lot of podcasts, you've won awards, and you've clearly built some, serious word of mouth, like you're saying, like 90%. What's your secret to building trust before you even have that first phone call?
The white glove service, like when we're doing the installation, we're going through the process. That's exact, it's essentially if the customer says like, hey Freddie, where are we with the application, I know it because I did it, or somebody like within my arm's reach like did it, so I know exactly where we stand. So I don't have to call somebody to get the answer or get anything. So it's really kind of goes smooth, and make sure I for the installation, I show up the morning of the installation. So when I talk to the customer, I relay that to my installers and say like, this is what we talked about. Can we do this per code? If we can, that's kind of, if we can't, we talk with the customer and we make sure all of these things are getting addressed in person with me. Because a lot of times, some of these sales organizations, what happens, the salesperson sells it and then it's done. And then like an installation crew who's subcontracted, they come on board and they do the installation and they don't really know what was being spoken. The notes, maybe there could be notes, but like nobody really reads the notes. And, the installations happen and the conduit run is like over the middle of the roof. And you're like, oh my God, like why did these things happen? Right. And for me personally, like I tell my guys, I was like, you installing every system like it is my personal house. So I need to make sure, it looks good, it's safe, and everything is done like it would, like that you would be doing for me. So like, 'cause if I'm not pleased on my house, like I'm not gonna be pleased on somebody else's house, right? So these are the things, and then people truly, you know, people don't mention those things as much, but they appreciate those things, right? And that's, I think, how they start reaching out to their friend, they're like friends, family, like, hey, if you're gonna do it, this is the right person to do it, because they will take care of you and make sure you understand before the installation happens of how things are gonna be run, where things are gonna be hung, and how the conduit is gonna be like.
Exactly. I think it's those things that really end up coming together at the end of the day and really helping out with like kind of what you said, like making the service all in one thing. Like you're not looking for the cheapest way. You're not looking to cut any corners, any shortcuts. You do it all yourself, and that's fantastic. And I think that leads into why, congratulations, by the way, you recently got nominated for the 2025 Bonds Home Award. So congratulations. And just give us a quick little rundown on what's next for Critical Mass Solar as you look into the future.
Yeah, so we're truly continuing to support our residential customers, and as we are growing, I don't want to grow too much in the residential area. I want to start doing a little bit more of a commercial projects. And then the last year, we did two. We actually just finishing one of the projects. We finished doing the inspection early next week, and it's a state of the art, brand new Porsche dealership up in Nashua, brand new building. So that's kind of like a flagship type of installation for us, and it's gonna be truly expose us in the commercial market, showing that, not only that we can do, the white glove service on the small, like 30 panel job, that we can do the same kind of thing on the larger scale too, like for like 1,000 panel job. You know what I mean? So those are the things that we're really kind of pushing a little bit more into is the commercial area. You know, More and more customers that we speak to, they own some businesses or they know somebody. So we're starting to really kind of like push a little bit more in the commercial space.
It's amazing. I'm sure networking is huge in that as well, and it gets you access to even more visibility that way.
That's exactly it. It's the networking, it's the, educating, and we've done like the meet and greets type of thing, Earth Day events where we sponsor an Earth Day event and we just sit down like, hey guys, like I'm just here to talk about solar. Here's lunch, and like you do what you wish, and again, it just seems for me kind of like when we're doing it, instead, like I'm still kind of like, I know knocking doors is probably the best way to get leads, but to me it's still probably one of the most frustrating avenues for homeowner and for the salespeople, right? So we're trying to stay away from that kind of situation, but I still want to get in front of as many homeowners as possible and then kind of create new avenues. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the businesses, other experts, and like whether it's mortgages or financial advisory or whatever, you can call it, and we go sit down, like do these kinds of meetings, for small business where we have 10 people sitting in the room, we provide lunch and we kind of talk about it. So we're really trying to push, if we're going to knock on the door, I'd rather knock on a door that has like 500 employees rather than like somebody like with husband and wife type of situation.
Exactly. That's a great way to look at it. And I think, having that mindset also kind of comes from the past and the experience that you've had, running this company for several years. And I guess what's one lesson that you've learned the hard way while, running this company?
Don't assume anything. Don't assume that somebody did something or somebody is gonna do something. It's truly better to ask, no matter how uncomfortable the question or the situation may be. Just ask, so there's no confusion of what's going on. When we don't talk and we don't express what's happening, right? That's when the miscommunication, frustration, and mistakes happen, right? It's like, oh, I thought like you said that. I was like, oh, never said that, right? Like, so I tell the company like, hey, just say the way it is, and maybe that's like, me being Lithuanian, Eastern European is like that's what we do. We just like it's either
Say it
black
straight up.
it's either black or white. And my wife's like, yeah, can you just tone it down a little bit? I was like, I don't know how. Like this is just like it's like yes or no. Like let's not, and to me it's like no is the second best answer, right? Just let's just go with it, right? Or hey, I may have a couple more questions, which is perfectly fine, but yeah, these assumptions is definitely one of the biggest things that I learned not to use.
Amazing. That's really good advice, not shying away from the difficult conversations and those awkward moments because I think you notice now I'm for sure like my like peers, like my generation, we don't like to have those difficult conversations. We'd rather go around and, figure out like a way um, to kind of avoid like the awkward moments and, have conversations you don't necessarily want to. But, given your experience, your expertise, it's definitely something that needs to be faced head on. And I
No,
think you're
it may not work in the moment, and some people will get upset. And I know people have gotten upset, but once the emotions or whatever you want to call it, like once they settle down and you realize like why things are being said the way they're being said, it makes a lot of sense. It's just like, if in general, as humanity, if we take the emotion out of what's being said, our lives would be so much easier, right?
yeah,
Like it's just like, somebody tells you something like, like, oh, can't believe they said that to me, instead of like, oh my God, like I have a really good friend or a really good acquaintance that they feel comfortable enough to say the way it is. It's the problem is like when somebody doesn't say it and they're like, Monday morning quarterbacks. So like, oh, I knew it was gonna happen. I'm like, why didn't you say so? Right. Like, and that's like, I say, like, I tell my friends, like, the ones that I'm really close with, like, hey, I want your honesty. I might be upset in the moment, but like I need friends that are not afraid to say the way it is, because that's just like that's the only way to really, to go about it, because otherwise we're just kind of like sitting there and like lying to each other. So I take
Empty words.
exactly, I take the same kind of approach, some customers. Obviously, it's a lot more toned down and in a little bit more professional way, but I still try to approach in the same way, kind of like, hey, this is where we are, this is what we need to do, and I apologize, for being so frank, but that's where we are.
That's fantastic. I love that. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap things up because it paints a bigger picture, even outside of business and being professional. I think that's just a basic human or like a personal quality that really should be aspired. Really don't shy away. Be open to talking about things that are difficult and being honest at the end of the day, right? Like that. That's what it all comes down to. And you've been able to, apply that into your business fantastically. And, the results are definitely speaking for themselves that way. So, Freddie, this has been awesome. From no pressure quotes to award-winning installs, you and your team are showing what it really looks like to build solar trust, basically, like one roof at a time. So, for anyone listening who wants to learn more, maybe even book a consultation, where should they go?
Just visit us on our website, www.curriculummasssolar.com. We have an intake form on there, or just there's a phone number there as well. So if they're calling, the office line gets rerouted right to my cell phone. So I'll be the one answering. Our at least our initial conversations, because I want to learn what you're looking for, why you're looking it for, and then how we can help you before we even start anything. So yeah, our website is probably the best way to reach us.
Fantastic. We'll have that in the show notes as well. And for everyone tuning in, thanks again for riding along with us on Off the Grid on the Record. And until next time, stay curious and let's keep building together. Thanks again, Freddie. We'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.